Okay. Everybody who is a goldfish fan up here? Oh, well, sorry. All the kids, Laura, jeez. There's enough. If there's leftover, I will put them out in the foyer afterwards. Goodness gracious. Pull yourself together, people. Yeah, well, no, it was your son was the other one. All right, shh, enough. This is not your time. Hey, guys, how many of you like goldfish? You do? Okay, you all like goldfish? You goldfish fans? I have another question. Who is really good at sharing? I need somebody that's really good at sharing. I mean really good. Oh, yeah. Ava, can you come help me for a second? Yeah, come here. Yeah, come here. Have a seat. We have some goldfish, and we also have a Bible story, and we're going to kind of have them both at the same time. But Ava's going to help me. You going to help me share? Yeah. Okay, I need you. Here, there's a story in the Bible where Jesus and his friends have a bunch of people around them, kind of like us. See all those people out there? Yeah, a bunch of people. Oh, yeah, hi, people. And they're all so hungry. Are you all so hungry? Do you wish I would stop talking so I could give you goldfish? Don't worry, we'll get there. But all they have to eat is a few pieces of bread and just 2 fish. Here, let me have your cup. I'm going to drop them right in there. And Jesus tells his friends, go ahead and share that. So you have your 2 fish? Yeah. Okay, and you're really good at sharing? Yeah. Okay, go ahead and share your fish with everybody. Go ahead. Wait a second. Is that enough? You don't think so? You don't think that's enough?
Jesus can make a lot of this.
He can make a lot of this? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, I am not Jesus. But I can try. So you keep sharing. Keep going. Keep sharing, and then just keep coming back if you need more. So Jesus' friends, they didn't think that it was possible either. They said, Jesus, look at all these people. How can we share with all of these people here? And Jesus said, just do it. Here, do you need more? Here, come on back. Just keep coming. Anytime you need more, come on back. I said, how are we going to do it with all these people? And Jesus says, just do it. Just hand it out. And so they start going, and they start handing out the fish. And every time they come back to Jesus, there's more. There's always more fish. And they keep sharing, and they keep sharing. And then there's always more. And they keep sharing, and they keep sharing, and there's always more. Hey, who else told me they were good at sharing? Who else told me they were good at sharing? Yeah? You want to come help too? You can come help too. Sure. I love your Sonic shirt. Here, just grab some and help me share, okay? Go ahead and grab them and help share. Keep going. And they kept sharing, and every time they needed more, they came back to Jesus. And even though when they started, there was just a couple pieces of bread and just a couple fish, they had enough to share with everybody. And everybody ate so much fish that when they were full, oh, look, there's more. When they were full, psst, are you still sharing over there? Look at you go. Oh, my goodness. I see you. When they were done eating, they were so full, they couldn't eat any more, and there was still fish. There was still fish. There was fish and fish and fish. Here, share that way. Here you go. Ready? There you go.
I had 2 cups.
You had 2 cups? I see. Here, keep sharing. And there was just more. There was fish everywhere. God, it's at this point, what are we even doing? Oh, there's more? You're still going? Here you go. Shh. Keep going. Here, don't worry about picking them up. I see. Do you know what I love about kids? I didn't have to teach them about sharing.
A lot.
At all. I apologize to whoever has to vacuum this floor. You know what? I'll do it. This is my fault anyways. Shh. Eli. And whoever has his back to me. Is it Corbin? We're going to have to teach each other about cleaning soon. Does everybody have some fish? Yeah. Who still needs fish? You still need fish?
I don't have
You still need? Come here. Here. Someone right there I need to share with. Here. Can you share? In a minute. Here you go. Oh my goodness, we need more? Okay, everybody do me a favor. Shh. Do me a favor. Have a seat. Real quick, and then we'll be able to go sit with our parents and share our fish. In that story, psst, 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 listen up. Shh, psst, 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 psst. Hey, hi, it's me, the guy with the fish. In the story, they just started out with 2 fish, kind of like we started out with 2 fish. Ava, did you think you were going to be able to share those 2 fish with everybody? What happened when you kept coming over, though? Was there always more fish? How come? I think this is beautiful. Hold your cup over here. The first person I gave fish to had none. Because you just kept giving them away. There you go. You need, okay. I want to smell your breath. You've been eating fish? No, okay, no. Listen up. Every time they came back to Jesus, there was always more, so they could keep sharing. And I want us to remember this, okay? When we share, when we share, like God asked us to, there is always more, because Jesus can always make more. Okay? You're going to give some to your dad? That's wonderful.
I'm going to give some to my dad, my brother, and my mom.
All right, why don't we find, you have 2 cups. Look at you. You're working the system. All right. Thank you so much for coming to help me. You can go have a seat. Now there's a problem. I might just finish, I'll just be here. We're gonna finish the chat from right here. I'm on camera, I'm fine. People online can see me. I better not do that. The people online can also probably hear me chewing. Oh. I honestly feel a little bad. I'll vacuum before I go home. We have a couple of announcements that I want to remind us of before we jump in, and then we'll jump on to the next thing and talk about another story. Excuse me. So just recapping real quick before we hit the announcements, we just started a series called Making Room last week, where I talked about hospitality and hospitality being at the center of practicing the gospel. If the gospel is the story of how God in his infinite love comes to us in our infinite messed upness, in the midst of our sin, in the midst of our falling short, and God calls us in. God invites us in with his love. Practicing the gospel means inviting people in, means extending hospitality, means showing love to those around us. We talked last week about how hospitality is not optional, that it's a crucial part of living a kingdom life. We talked about how hospitality is not about showing off, but it's about showing up and showing love for people. So that is where we kind of were last week. I have a goldfish in my mouth I can't swallow, so give me just a second. No, I've got coffee. I just needed to find a break, so I couldn't find. Anyways, and I apologize, Dawn. I just blasted past the announcements. We'll do them at the end. So I have nothing to say to you that I haven't already said to the kids. But they don't need as much reinforcement to learn how to share as adults do sometimes. And that's not a slight on you all. I'm an adult too, believe it or not. So all I have to say is that a part of practicing hospitality, part of making room in our lives to love others, is learning how to share, learning how to be generous. And the story of Jesus miraculously feeding 5,000 people, which is one of the few miracles that's in all 4 Gospels, is not just about Jesus' power. It's not just about God's miraculous provision. It's also a learning moment for the disciples. When Jesus tells them, I want you to share, and they say, we don't have enough to share. And Jesus says, do it anyways and see what will happen. And as they share, more shows up. And as they share, more shows up. It's a reminder about how we should react when God calls us to be generous. But just so you don't feel slighted. The kids got their own message. How come we don't get our own? Well, so you don't feel cheated, I'll tell you a story too. There aren't enough goldfish for you all to have some, but there's no fish in this story, so it'll be fine. In the book of 1 Kings, There's a story, and we actually alluded to it a little bit several weeks ago. You may or may not remember we had a series earlier in the year called The Outsiders, where we looked at several stories from the Gospel of Luke where Jesus seems to pay special attention to people on the outside, the people who are not kind of in the middle of the kind of normal religious life, that Jesus goes to the outsiders. And the first sermon in that series, where we looked at Jesus' first sermon in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus talks about the widow of Zarephath. And I'm sure all of you are like, yes, of course, that well-known Bible story, the widow of Zarephath. Well, here it is. It's in the book of 1 Kings, and this is how that story goes. Sometime later, the brook, it's not terribly important. If you need the context, you can look at the early part of the story. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. And the word of the Lord came to him, the prophet Elijah. The word of the Lord came to him, "Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon, outside of Israel. And stay. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food." So he went to Zarephath. And when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink?" And as she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." It's just a very weird story. And this is what she said. "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home to make a meal for myself and my son so that we can eat it and die." We're going to pause here for a second. This is a tragic story. God has called the prophet to go to this place outside of Israel. Says there's someone there who's going to take care of you. He finds this person. He says, "Please, can I have a drink and a little piece of bread?" And her response to that is, "As surely as your God lives." Now, this is an outsider. She's not even an Israelite. She says, "As surely as your God lives, all I've got is a little bit of flour, a little bit of oil. I'm getting sticks so that I can make our last meal, because after this, we will have nothing left and we're just going to die." You would expect, if this were to be a story about generosity, that what ought to happen is the prophet would say, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to see you in such a sad state. I will share with you." This is not how it goes. It carries on. Elijah said to her, "Do not be afraid. Go home and do as you have said," and make the meal. "But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day that the Lord sends rain on the land." And she went away and did as Elijah told her. And there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. I love that story. And that story tells us a few things about living generous lives, about what it means to make room for generosity in our lives. If you hear nothing else today, I want you to hear this and remember it and internalize it. God blesses our generosity. When we give, God blesses that gift. This is not a prosperity gospel sermon. I'm not telling you, give me money and you will be blessed. This is maybe the only time you'll hear a generosity sermon that is not about the offering. It is about living a life that is giving to others, to those around you. What does it mean to share what you have? God blesses our generosity. God uses generosity to change us. To shape us. God changes and shapes us when we give, and He changes and shapes us as we receive. Generosity is one of the tools that God uses to change lives. That as we give, we are changed. And God multiplies those gifts. I love this story because you would expect in a story like this, a person of God sees a person in need, and the person of God steps in, and then they can say, "Look, this is what I've done. I've done my good deed. I have given." And that is not what this story is about. This story is about God providing as people are generous. The woman in the story has nothing. She is in the most desperate state you can imagine. You read this story, and it is heartbreaking. She's walking around picking up sticks so that she can cook the very last food in the house, and then she plans to die afterwards. She is in the most desperate state you could possibly think of a person being in. And Elijah says, this is what God will do. He says, give first. He says, make me my bread. Then make bread for you and your son, and it will never run out. God will continue to fill the jars as you continue to faithfully give, to faithfully share. This is what God does. Whether it's flour and water in a jar in Zarephath, or whether it's fish by the sea with the apostles and the crowd of 5,000, God continues to provide. God miraculously provides as we faithfully share, as we do what God asks us to do. But there's a flip side, like with so many of these stories, a challenge, I guess. It's funny to me how often in the scripture, it's the people who can't give, who do give, and then that gets multiplied. You know, the disciples say, we literally do not have enough food. There are 5 little loaves, 2 little fishes. There is no possible way we could feed all these people. And then it happens. The woman says, I only have enough food to scrape by a last meal for my son and myself. There's no possible way I can share. And God works through that generosity, and God multiplies, and God blesses. The people who often can afford to share in Scripture are almost always the ones who don't. So there is in Luke 12 a parable that goes like this. It starts in 12:16. Jesus told this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. Rich man in Luke, always the bad guy. Sorry to tell you. That just is what it is. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store all my crops. It's like, oh man, what am I going to do? My wallet's not big enough to hold all my money. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said, you fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? And this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. There is a flip side. I do not want the finance team to chase me down after service and beat me up behind the church, so I will be very careful with how I say this. We very often, we as a church, but we as a people, we as human beings, I think, get wrapped up in ourselves. And we like the concept of sharing. We like the concept of generosity, but only after we are comfortable. Only after our needs are met. I will do what I need for myself, and then I will share the leftovers. And that's not generosity. That's selfishness. We sometimes call it stewardship, but I don't think that's what that word means. We keep things to ourselves, we hold on to things, and we say that we're trying to be careful with our blessing. We're trying to be good stewards of what God gave us. We've all used this phrase before. But sometimes I think that is a cover for just being selfish. Here's maybe a test. If you are using the word stewardship to not spend money on yourself, maybe that's actually stewardship. If you are using the term to make yourself feel better about not sharing with someone else, that's maybe selfishness. And we should think about that. Because if what we're doing is building bigger barns or buying a bigger wallet for all our hundreds, I mean, I guess that's a problem people have. I don't know. This is probably selfishness. We're not living the generous life that God calls us to. One of the professors, he used to be the president at the Bible college I went to ages ago, told a story kind of dogging on himself. He said he and his family, is a good-sized family, has a twin brother and several other siblings and all the kids, and they went to this family camp. And he said, I decided one morning I was going to do something really generous, really nice. I went out and got donuts for everyone. Before anyone woke up, I went out and got donuts for everybody, and I brought them back to the camp so they'd be there waiting. When everyone got there, they'd wake up in the morning, oh, donuts, Larry, you're great. And he got one that was like his favorite kind, right? Like anytime you go get donuts, there is no point in going to buy donuts if you're not going to get at least one that you really like, okay? I mean, what are we even doing? Oh, back. So he got the one, right, that he really liked, and before everyone woke up, he took that one out of the box, and he set it behind the box, put a napkin over it, so no one would take it, right? No one would see it. And then everyone woke up, oh, Larry, you got donuts, that's great. And they all coming out, and they're grabbing their donuts, they're getting their things. And his nephew, archaeologist that he is, went digging, and he uncovered the treasure hidden behind the box under a napkin where no one could see this special donut. He saw it back there, and he wanted it, and so he pulled it out. And Larry, telling the story, telling himself, he said, I came unglued. I was like, hey, what are you doing? That's my donut, man. Did you see the napkin on it? Couldn't you tell that it wasn't? It's like, that's mine. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I thought they were for everyone. He's like, look, I don't mind sharing as long as I get mine. And then he heard himself. I don't mind sharing as long as I get mine. And we can choose to look at the part of that is, I got these things for other people. Look at my generosity. But if at the core of it, we're only doing that after we get our own, that's not the type of generosity that God calls us to. We take care of ourselves first and give the leftovers. But what if we tried something more like the story of the 5,000, or something more like the story of the widow at Zarephath? What if we gave first? What if we chose to give first? And then trust God to do what God does, to provide miraculously after our generosity, to provide and to take care of all the other things. What if we trusted that God would do what God says that God will do? One of the only times in Scripture that God says it's okay to test him. Most of the places in Scripture, if you look around, it says, don't test God. Don't put the Lord your God to the test, right? It's in the, what's it called? The temptation story. The temptation story of Jesus. He says, do not put the Lord your God to the test. And most of the time, when the Bible talks about testing God, it says, don't do it. The one time that I know of, and there maybe are other ones, but the only time I've ever seen when God says, test me, is when he calls people to be generous. He says, bring your whole tithe into the storehouse. Test me in this and see if I don't pour out my blessings. Share. Live generously. Give generously. And just see what God does with that. The things that you remember from being a kid are very funny to me. I have said before that I grew up in a preacher's house. I've heard many sermons and communion meditations, offering meditations, and there's a few of them that randomly stick out. And there was a guy, one of our elders at the church I grew up in, who used to like to say at our offering time, he'd say, today we're going to do a special offering, so I'm going to ask everyone to stand and take your neighbor's wallet out of their pocket and give like you've always wanted to, is what he was. And we would laugh about it. And I think the point of it was, if it's not mine, it's easier to give away. If that's my wallet and I'm pulling money out of it, I'm like, well, but if it's someone else's, who cares? It doesn't impact me at all. If it's not mine, it's easier to give away. I have news for you, and maybe this is the key. Maybe this is the key to living the type of generous life that God calls us to. Maybe the key to generosity is none of it's yours. It's not mine. Whether it comes out of my wallet or not, all of the things that God gives us, that God lets us use, that God blesses us with, those are not ours. So we can give like we've always wanted to. It doesn't belong to you anyways. Maybe that's the key. I know. I hope that throughout this series, that not only are we thinking more about hospitality, thinking more about what living hospitable lives might look like, but I hope that we have a chance to practice it in some way. I mentioned last time that I, for my birthday, told my wife I wanted 40 visitors. I've been asked several times. I'm up to 32, but there's several that I realized that I haven't counted, so I might actually be at 39. I'm getting very close, so that's exciting. And not all of them have been, people coming into the house. Not all of them have been, we've, gone and met people in different places, and it has been really great. And I challenged you last time. I don't care if it's a number. I don't care if it's, one person, or if you just want to, get coffee every once in a while, or maybe catch someone for lunch, that you do something over the next several weeks to practice making room to connect with people, making room to love people, and maybe to make room for generosity. One of our former youth group students who still lives in the area posted something on Facebook the other day, and I told her, I'm preaching on generosity tomorrow, maybe I'll use it. But it said something along the lines of, if you have $4 and I've got 40, I'm buying. And if you don't have gas and I do, I'm driving. And somewhere further down the line, it said, if you're hungry and I've got a McChicken, we're McSplitting it. Which was the part that I had to remember to actually say. So maybe we practice that. Generosity doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be, writing the big check, the great big thing. Maybe it's just picking up coffee for somebody. And if you don't go to Starbucks, you could probably get it for a couple bucks. At Starbucks, you could get it with points. So if anybody wants coffee, points for days. Maybe we find a way to make room this week for generosity. Make room to give something, anything. Just to see what God does with it. Our generosity, as God blesses our faithfulness, as God blesses our trust, that even as we give, He will continue to pour out. And there will be fishes all over your floor.